So I'm not saying that this happened, but it is possible that they could have taken his diploma.
So, okay, if they took his diploma, would they? You get a diploma, you get a master's degree in anything, Angel. What are you going to do with it?
Frame it.
You're going to frame it. You're going to take pictures with it, right? Can he produce pictures of the graduation? Can he produce pictures of?
Yeah.
Hey, look, you can see my diploma in the background.
To me, that's the sketchiest part of the whole story is the college part.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly,
that's the sketchiest part?
Honestly, it is, because I already know that there's aliens. I mean, come on. We know that from people we've talked to.
I absolutely know that there are aliens out there.
And I'll tell you, we'll get to why some of the other stuff isn't quite as sketchy to me. But, I can kind of rationalize some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
But this, I just can't quite, I've thought of different scenarios, like I just said, about the degrees, but he had to have done something because this was the 70s and 80s he was going to school in. Okay?
Yeah.
They didn't have internet.
Mm-mm.
Now, they did have books, but, I just cannot believe that he learned the things that he knows without having some education. I don't know.
My thing for that is, I know some extremely smart people that can spit some shit out to you about the subject that they love that have never been to school.
That's true. I mean, let's think back to, what was that movie where the guy pretended to be all these different things?
Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
Leonardo
that guy
DiCaprio.
Obviously was a genius.
Yeah.
But he was convincing as heck.
Yes. He was charismatic as shit.
Yeah. So I will say, if there's anything in the story that I say that I really lean towards not believing, it's the degrees from Caltech and MIT.
Now, give me something that makes you believe his story.
Well, we need to go through it because there's different points. So,
gotcha.
Do you have anything else to say about the education?
No, I mean you basically said everything I was going to say. Give us a copy of the diploma, a picture of you with a diploma. Show us a picture of you with a diploma in the background. Something.
You would think that there would be at least a picture of him. When he graduated. Yeah. Now, it's not like nowadays where they used to take selfies all the time and that kind of thing. No, it's not like that, or it wasn't like that back then. Yeah. But there should be at least a picture of him with the diploma. Also, because he owned and operated a photo lab later, so the man liked to take pictures.
Yeah, I heard the lightning in here. Did you hear it?
Mm-hmm. Crackling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. Anyways,
if we die, we die. We can do the paranormal podcast from beyond.
Yeah, that's right. So that's basically it. So another claim that he made was that he worked at Los Alamos National Labs in the 80s, which we talked about.
Yep.
He says he worked there as a scientist. Well, the reason that I believe that, there's a couple of reasons.
Okay.
The first reason that I believe that is because they did find his name in a phone directory.
Okay.
Now, it did not have his titles.
So he could have been a janitor.
That's one of the things that people have said. But he did. He was in the phone directory for Los Alamos during that time period where he said he worked there. Another thing is, and this is not definitive, but he was in the newspaper in that area. He made jet cars and things like that, and they were talking about him there, and they referred to him as a scientist at Los Alamos.
Okay.
Which you would think, and not necessarily there again, but you would think if he wasn't really a scientist, he's on the front page, and that somebody would have. Yeah, some of the scientists out there would have been like, he doesn't. He's not. He doesn't represent us. The last thing was there was a scientist who is verified to have worked at Los Alamos who came forward. His name was Dr. Robert Krangle. He worked at Los Alamos. That's verified. He says he remembers.
Yeah, does he remember what Lazar did?
Yes.
Okay.
He said he was a fellow scientist out there. I mean, he said
on
that.
On what project, though? I mean.
Well, they didn't have that kind of information, though. The way it is there, it's segmented. This section has a little bit of information. This section has a little bit. Bob Lazar has always said they only gave the information you needed to work on your project. Dr. Robert Kringle said the same thing.
Okay, so if that was the case, why, when this is from the documentary, the little bit that I did see, here comes some more thunder, guys, the little bit that I did see, he said that when they were giving him his security clearance, they gave him packets. And in those packets, they were talking about alien dissections.
Right.
Why would they give him that?
That is another thing people have questioned.
Yeah. You know, he doesn't have the clearance yet. They're working on it. But they're like, hey, here you go. Here's some shit to look at.
The theory is that there's a couple of things. Number one, that, you know, maybe they did think that he needed that information.
Why would you need that to reverse engineer a jet engine or a anti-gravity
Well, it's
engine?
hard to say because I don't know what all was in the packet. We'll talk a little bit about it. Nobody knows everything that was in there, but we do know some things. But another theory is that the reason they gave him the packet, or anybody else the packet, is because if there was any kind of a leak, they would know where it came from.
Okay.
Maybe they gave him these stories, somebody else these stories. So, you know, if it starts getting out there, then they know where it came from.
But even with that, though, why would they give him this information and not another scientist? I mean, okay, it sounds better in my head, but, you know...
Well, you don't know if they gave them to other scientists or not.
I can understand what you're saying. It's like you tell one friend something, tell another friend something, and see what gets out there.
Exactly.
I understand that, but...
That was in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was, yeah.
So, and I don't know. I'll tell you, I tend to believe what I know that was in the packet just because of the evidence that's out there. And I guess we could go ahead and talk about what's in the packet since we're talking about it so much. But basically, what he said was in the packet is that gray aliens have been here and been involved with people for over 10,000, or for the last 10,000 years, and that they come from Zeta Reticuli, or he said Zeta Reticuli. I always said Zeta Reticuli, so I don't know.
It's the same place.
Anyways, and that's 39.3 light years from Earth. It's a binary star system, which means there's two stars that orbit around a common center of mass. And that the gray aliens have influenced our history. They've influenced our geology and our genetics, that they've actually played with our genetics and added some genes and things like that.
Here's my thing, and this is just me spitballing. If they've been influencing humankind for the past 10,000 years, why are they just now giving us all of this information? Why couldn't they give Galileo all of this information?
Maybe they did.
Okay.
Maybe. Well,
why couldn't they? Why did they wait so long for the industrial evolution to happen? Why couldn't they have made that happen sooner?
Well,
10,000 years ago, that's before the pyramids were built. Maybe that's why we have hieroglyphs with UFOs.
Yeah.
But why don't we have an actual UFO from that time frame?
Well, the thing about it is one of the things that he said is some of these UFOs, not the one he worked on, but some of the UFOs they have there, which he said they have at least 9 that he knows of, because he did see 9 of them.
Yeah.
Wasn't really supposed to, but he just caught a quick glimpse one day. But anyways, some of them were supposed to be from archaeological digs, that they found them in the earth, and that they actually were extremely old.
Okay.
So
why don't we have
that's a claim.
Why don't we have that information from when they found them? Because back in the day, let's go back to 1920 when they discovered anything, it was all over the paper.
But
why would they suppress
the
this?
The thought is that it's different with aliens, because if our government or if people have worked with these aliens in the past, there's maybe limitations. Maybe there's a strong theory out there that our government has had an agreement with the gray aliens that they could abduct our people and we could study their stuff.
Okay, our government. What about other governments? Where were these things
probably other governments as well.
Let's say they discover these things in Egypt
in
the 1920s.
If they've been here for that long, I'm sure they probably did the same thing with them. I don't know.
If they've been here this long, 10,000 years, let's say that, why don't we know anything else about them? Why were they waiting so long? Why are they hidden in the shadows, so to speak?
I will say that in my studies, the strongest theory that I have found, and it's strongest to me, you may not agree, but is that they actually are the aliens that we know of, or that we believe we know of, are actually, their job is to go out onto different planets and try to plant life.
Yeah, me and Grip Centers kind of touched on that a little bit.
But they can, although they can plant life, we here on Earth have free will.
Okay, why do we have free will?
Well, I can't tell you that. That's just part of the thing.
Why are they still trying to influence us if we have free will?
They can't actually do anything to change our free will, but they are basically, kind of our life givers, in a way. I mean, not basically we're their garden, if that theory is true. And, they are allowed to do so much, but they can only go so far because they're not allowed to completely influence our free will. And yes, that sounds far-fetched, but I like thinking about this kind of stuff and talking about this stuff. It also makes a little bit of sense, though, that looking back through history and the whole ancient aliens theory and all that stuff, I mean, I truly believe myself that the gods were aliens back then. I really do. I believe that makes sense.
It does. I can see that. But even still, coming back to this, I mean, it's going to be a little bit off.
I'm not the best at explaining things, first of all, and it is something that I'm still reading on. I don't know that much about, so I can't sit and debate so much about it. But it just, it's something that I've thought about.
I just think that if they've been here for 10,000 years, if there was a UFO discovered on an archaeological dig, that would be the biggest news story ever. It would be too big to suppress.
I don't know. Let's look at Roswell. I don't know what happened at Roswell, whether that was a spaceship or not. But it's pretty damn funny that the day that it happened, the spokesperson for the military said it's a spaceship.
Yeah.
And the next day they're like, no, it's not.
Yeah, but okay, it was still in the press though.
Yes, at that point, but maybe they've learned since then. I don't know how old that was, what, in the 50s?
Yeah.
And I don't know how old, when they were supposed to have dug these up. I don't know if it was like, before then, if it was more recent that they dug them up or whatever. I don't know.
I'm just saying that something like that, someone would have leaked. I mean, here we have one dude.
Not if the government threatens them.
Well, here we have one dude.
The whole thought, Aaron, is that if the government comes out and says there are aliens, or if we know that there's aliens and we find out for a fact, that's going to change everything in our world. It'll change our economy. It'll change how our relationship with our governments. Our governments will lose a lot of their power because, people are going to realize that there's a whole lot more to everything than...
See, you're making it worse right now because the longer they wait, the worse it's going to be for them.
But,
I mean, let's say they come out right now and say, oh yeah, in 1950, when Roswell happened, I think it was in 51 or some shit like that. I can't remember exactly when it was. When this happened, we discovered that there were aliens. If they do it now, well, it's been, 70 years? So,
you mean if the government tells us about it?
Yeah, it's like, okay, we didn't want to cause
I don't think the government wants
hysteria.
to tell us about it. I think that we're getting to the point where people know so much more that they're not going to have a choice.
Would it be worse for them to come forward now and say, hey, we've known about it since Roswell. We've been trying to figure out where they're from.
On the government's part, yes, and that's kind of the point.
Or would it be worse if 30 years from now? They will lose their power
over us in a major way if we do find out for a fact that these aliens are here.
I don't think we're going to lose I don't think they're going to lose power over us.
We will have lost trust in them completely.
We're losing trust in the government every day anyway.
We are, and that's true, and that's like the nail in the coffin.
So at what point in time is it like, okay, the government's known about aliens for 30 years, okay, whatever.
Yeah. I don't
40
know.
years, 50 years, 60 years, whatever.
I don't know.
You see,
I mean, these are just theories,
that's my thing too.
But I strongly believe that. I mean, I've said our government's corrupt. They hide things from us.
Yeah.
They don't care
so
about
the old
us.
saying,
I mean,
honestly, I love my country, but I fear my government.
Yeah, we're here basically as their cattle.
Let's go back to the archaeological dig. Here we've got one guy, Bob Lazar, who was hired to work in Area 51 or Section 4, whichever one you want to call it.
That's south of Area 51.
Yeah, well, it's around the same area.
But it is
pretty much
close
the same
to the
place.
area. Yeah.
We've got one guy that blew the whistle on this. I'm doing the little air quotes, blew the whistle on this. On an archaeological dig, how many people do you have working on that? Of course, you're going to have your archaeologists. You're going to have scientists out there.
Right.
But who's doing the grunt work?
Well,
why wouldn't one of those guys come forward and said, hey, look, we found a friggin' UFO in the desert?
That is a good point. I don't know if that has ever happened or not, because you don't know. Honestly, I mean, we're looking at before the internet. If we're looking back then, it could be, since the internet, but it's more doubtful that it was since the internet to me. But, maybe somebody did, and maybe they knocked them off, or, maybe they threatened them.
That leads me to this right here. Saying. We've got Bob Lazar who's saying all of this shit. And why is he still alive if the government doesn't want it out there?
That's a good point. And that's what I had wondered myself. And we'll get into it a little bit later, because I don't want to get way ahead of ourselves. But there's more to that story that makes me think that, maybe there's some things he's done that have saved himself. Which one of the things is coming forward to the public, but that's not the only thing. There's more. Yeah. I don't want to spoil it, so we'll get there. I think this is probably going to be a two-parter.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a two-parter. Yeah.
So another thing is that it said in the debriefing that gray aliens had been gone since 1979.
They've been gone away from here.
Away from here.
Okay.
Now.
So 30.
That's hard to believe.
You said the one place is 32 light years away from here?
39.3 light years.
39. So they've made it back to their home world by now. If they're traveling at the speed of light, maybe they're traveling faster than light. I don't know.
Well, the way that this is the interesting thing. The way that Bob Lazar says that the saucers, I'm going to just say saucers or whatever.
Yeah,
the way that the UFOs fly is, okay, you see a UFO, saucer-shaped UFO sitting on the ground. Yeah. Everybody, you just imagine that. Then when it'll raise up straight in the air and then tilt up, put its belly forward like this, like if you were to turn
like
your
you're
hand.
About to slap me.
Right, like I'm about to slap you. And then take off, but the way it moves is not like we move with a combustible engine. It just pushes us forward. The way that it moves is by basically bending space.
Okay.
So that it doesn't move in a steady flow. It's like here and then it's over here.
Okay, so
and it like bends space.
So where is it at whenever it's bending space? Is it 10 feet above the ground, 20 feet above the ground?
I don't know. He didn't say that.
10 miles.
But that's how he was saying that it moved.
So if this thing is bending space, wouldn't someone notice that?
No.
Why
because, well, there are a couple of things. For one thing, he said that when you get under the craft and you look up, the way that it is constructed, and this is why I have to have notes so I'll say it right. So basically, he said that the human eye it's not able to see its shape because of the complex manipulation of light. Somehow the craft is made so that when it's above you, you can't really tell it. So, and that's a possibility. There's, who knows.
The thing about it is, okay, you may not be able to see the craft, but someone would notice if space. Let's do the whole thing right here where space is bent like this. This is space, and it's bent. Someone's got to notice that shit.
I don't know. I mean, I've never seen space bent to be able to tell if you would notice it or not. Well, I'm not knowledgeable enough to answer that.
Let's say, okay, we've got the Hubble telescope up there, and this UFO is flying up, all weird like, and let's say it goes, 300 miles up or some shit. Right. So it's out of our atmosphere, and it bends space. You're telling me that someone won't notice that Saturn is getting closer to Earth?
Why don't we do this, Aaron? We both do this show, but I usually handle the website and all these other projects. Mm-hmm. Why don't you look for some scientists to email, even at some of any universities or whatever. Why don't you email that question out to a bunch of them and let's see if we can get some answers. That's intriguing. I mean, that's a good point.
I'll try to go to the JC tomorrow before I head to Gulfport.
Did you say JC?
Yeah, junior college right here.
We want real scientists.
Well, I mean, if I can go talk to one guy here and he can give me a higher name, a higher up name, maybe.
And Google, too.
I mean, you're saying that
Neil deGrasse Tyson's going to come on the show.
So you're saying that the professor here, the JC, is not as smart as like someone at a higher up college?
If they're working at a junior college, they just probably don't have as much education. They could easily be smarter.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I don't know that. I mean, it's a good, you can ask them, but I'm just saying I would like to know that from somebody with a high degree. PhD, master's.
That's my thing right there. I mean, I'll ask them the same exact way. It's like you're looking at space.
You have to have a master's to teach anyways, don't you?
You're looking at space like this. We're right here. Where they're going is right here. 39 light years from here.
Right.
You're not going to notice that stuff is closer.
I don't know.
That's my big thing right there.
Well, a lot of people who have witnessed UFOs say it was the weirdest thing. They were here, and then they disappeared, and they're here.
Yeah, I mean, teleportation might be a thing. Maybe they have master teleportation. Yeah. Maybe there are limits to it where, hey, we can teleport, 500 miles away.
Right.
Or we can teleport, 10,000 miles away. I don't know.
Well, the thing that, it's I don't know, it's interesting. So I'd like to know, we'll see. Maybe we can get some answers from some different scientists. That question comes up to, maybe teleportation is them just bending space and time. I don't know. Maybe it is. But maybe that would be a whole lot safer than deconstructing and reconstructing. Yeah, well, that's the thing right here. And he actually talked about this shit where if you were to go back to the 16th century and bring a nuclear core or a nuclear generator back there, they're going to take it apart, and they're all going to wind up dying because of the radiation, because no one knows what the hell it is. Nobody knows, exactly. And that's a good point. Yeah, and they're like, okay, well, take this shit apart. And that's the thing. He was actually, if you believe his story, he was hired because two scientists, I don't remember if it was one or two. Some sources say two. I think he said one. Yeah. But anyways, a scientist that worked in that position before them, tried to cut through the craft with a proton laser, and it exploded. Or I don't know that it's that craft. It's probably different. But it exploded and killed him. Yeah. And that's why they needed somebody else. So my other question on this is, Bob Lazar is a jet engine guy. That's been established. We already know this. Why would they get a jet engine guy to come in on a quantum? You know what? He actually addressed that, and he admitted, he said, I'm not the best candidate for that. I wasn't the best candidate for that position. Yeah. So why would they bring him in? Ooh, the lights just blinked. They blanked. That's a Black Army CIA helicopters coming after us right now. They probably are, because he said the government is crooked. Oh, my gosh. Anyways, he said that what a lot of times they're looking for is not so much somebody that is super experienced in a certain area, but somebody that they think can get the job done for a certain area. Yeah, thinking outside the box, pretty much. Yeah, and that's basically what he ended up, saying is basically thinking outside the box. If you look at it, a lot of scientists are not real great about thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Because they're so analytical.
Yeah.
And then, not that definitely doesn't, I'm not trying to generalize, because a lot of them obviously can, or we wouldn't have the developments that we have. But, not everybody would be able to do that. And so that was kind of his theory on that, because he agreed. But also, we've pretty much, in my opinion, established that he worked for Los Alamos.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's got to look damn good on your resume. I mean, if he worked at Los Alamos, he thinks outside the box. Yes, he does jet propulsion, but, that ain't just, easy itself.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they hire him if you think about the whole picture?
We've already established he's obviously a smart dude.
And,
he knows his shit.
As far as the Caltech and the MIT and the degrees, if he had faked that before, then that's just going to probably follow right along, you know what I'm saying, to the next job and the next job. He's probably not going to have to provide proof at every job he goes to.
Yeah.
Now, in the medical field, you do.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it would be like that outside of the medical field.
Yeah.
I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody.
You might have to. I don't know.
Yeah.
But okay, let's get on to another point that makes you believe what he's talking about.
As far as him working there, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard without going through more of the story. Let's just talk. Let's go ahead and go into a little bit more of the story, and we'll get there.
Okay.
Because I can't really, I don't want to get ahead of us.
Yeah.
But because what I'm trying to do too is kind of tell the story of the situation as we go.
Okay.
So basically, let's back up and look at when he went to work at S4.
Okay.
There and give you a little bit of a picture of what happened. He was met by a man named Dennis Mariani. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then they actually got in a plane and flew into the S4 area. There were hangars and buildings built into the side of the mountains.
Yep.
And like I said, there were 9 total that he saw at one time. So the specific flying saucer, the specific flying saucer that he worked on, he called the sport model. Don't know why, but that's what he called it. So maybe you might see it referred sporty, that way sometime.
Yeah. Maybe it just looks sporty, not like a minivan or anything.
I saw the drawing. It don't look too sporty to me, but okay.
Did it have like some off-road tires on it?
Well, we'll actually put the drawing he made online, and you'll be able to see it. But it just looks like your basic everyday flying saucer. Yeah. So anyways, the interesting thing is he said that he discovered, or I don't know if he said he discovered, but that it was discovered that basically they ran on an antimatter reactor that was powered by the element 115, which is moscovium. So one of the interesting things is this moscovium, element 115, is a stable version of the element. Mm-hmm. At the time, we hadn't even discovered element 115 on Earth at all. Nobody knew anything about it. So he said, when he came out, he told them about the element 115. Now later, way ahead in 2003, it was discovered in a lab. But it's an unstable version. Most scientists, from what I've read, don't believe that you could have a stable version, that it would change all of physics if you did. But then there are scientists that say you absolutely could. We're learning every day, and things are changing as far as what we know with physics and that kind of thing anyways. So, it just depends. There again, people are split on the whole situation, on their opinions. But what I find... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What I find interesting, too, is he also said that it generated a gravity wave.
Okay.
Well, guess what? It hadn't been that long ago that scientists have come out and said, hey, we think gravity is a wave.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that back then.
Einstein did.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he say that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that. But anyways, that was one of the things that I was thinking. But the element 115, nobody did know about that, and then we discovered that. So to me, that's really interesting. But another thing that's interesting to me is the Russians are the ones that synthesized element 115. Okay, at one point, while he was at S4, they brought the Russians over to show them what they found. What they had, the UFOs and what they had found. And then they sent them back home and basically were like, well, they're ours. Just wanted to show you, but you can't have them. Anyways, so if, it's kind of interesting that he said that and then it ended up being the Russians that discovered it. Mm-hmm. Well, how would they have known about it at all? Well, maybe it's because they were actually brought to the area and that's how they were introduced to the element in the first place. So I don't know.
Okay. On element 115.
Yes.
Whenever he said element 115 powers these spacecraft, did he give us anything, any kind of description of it on how it works, what it does?
No,
where to
because
find it? So nothing at all.
Well, here's the thing.
So he knows that it operates the same.
They didn't figure that out while he was there. But the interesting thing about it is we talk about this. It sounds like he was there for ages. Mm-hmm. He was there for like 6 to 9 months, and he only worked for a few hours at a time because he hadn't gotten to the point where he was going to be able to work there full time yet. He had to prove himself. Yeah. Which he did not do.
Yeah, for real, right? I mean.
But that's another thing. Some of the things that he says makes him look bad.
Yeah.
If you were going to lie, why would you make yourself look so bad in some areas? You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're as intelligent as he is.
Well, I'm gonna read to you from a website on element 115. Long before Moscovian was created and assigned the number 115 on the periodic table of elements, Lazar claimed it was capable of powering anti-gravity engines. Some people feel this vindicates Lazar and proves the rest of his kooky claims. However, for Lazar to be right, virtually all of modern atomic physics would need to be wrong. Unfortunately, the very method of his apparent vindication that element 115 had finally been created directly contradicts a key claim that Bob Lazar made. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this. Unupentinium cannot be synthesized in a lab, that it must be found in naturally occurring deposits that can only be made in a high-mass star system. Claim of stable isotope of element 115 is unlikely according to our knowledge of nuclear physics, in particular, predicted island of stability and known magic numbers. Magic numbers, as we know, it are always, that's kind of weird right there the way they word it, are always even numbers. Therefore, it is very unlikely, admittedly not impossible, to have stable heavy elements with odd numbers of protons.
Okay, so that's basically what I was just talking about. I've actually read that article. Yeah. And the thing about it is, that's one person's writing that, but other scientists that I read, I don't have names. And that's the thing. They don't give you the names on all this. And that's why I would like, this is probably a good question we could send out as well. Add it to your list.
Okay.
But yeah, what?
I said added.
Added. Anyways, but, supposedly some scientists say the opposite. So, I don't know. Let's see if we can get some answers on that. But he also, yes, he was wrong, obviously, when he said that it couldn't be synthesized. Okay. Because they did. Yeah. But nobody said he was perfect. I mean, that's just a hypothesis on his part. That wouldn't be a fact.
Back in 1980, what is it, like 30 years before, they were able to validate this thing. He said that 115 did this. So what's the proof that it does?
Yeah.
I mean, I could say element.
He's never said that I'm aware of.
I could say element 173 can cause teleportation. 173 hasn't been discovered yet.
Well, they actually had the element there. I mean, pretty sure he actually took some of element 115 with him.
Okay, where's it at? Why didn't he say, well, hey, here's 115 right here. This validates my claim right here. And you're going to say, hey, if I die, this is going to be brought out to the public. This is my safeguard. Are you telling me that the U.S. government wouldn't be able to find that shit?
Well, there's a couple of things there. He may not have taken it. He doesn't admit that he's taken any. The question has been asked to him many times over the years, and he says he is not going to comment on it.
Okay.
But that is something that is speculated. I don't know. But basically, if he is smart enough to carry some of this other stuff off, maybe he is able to hide it somewhere. Maybe he didn't take it at all. Maybe he just wants the government to think he did, so that, that's just, more reason that they would not do something to him, because he could come out, and say, here it is. I do know that, well, we'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
I'm reading just a little bit more on the Moscovium. Uh-huh. And it's saying that only since 2003, only 50 atoms of it have been produced.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I did read that too. That it's not a lot, and they were. I don't remember how much they said they had.
If this thing is powering gravity waves, how much do they have? Mm-hmm. I mean, the supermassive, super heavy.
Have to be a lot.
Yeah, you're not going to have one atom powering a gravitational wave.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, we all know the destructive power of the atom.
That this element 115 is found naturally in Zeta Reticuli. Yeah. I don't know.
And then
good question.
Physics would have to be.
If you think of any more questions, add them to your list. I mean, these are all good questions.
Added.
Yes. Are you going to remember these?
I will, yeah.
You got a better memory than me, son.
I know.
All right. So.
You want to know what I had for lunch 3 years ago?
Not particularly.
Sure.
Not particular. And I don't want to know what it looked like when you pooped it out.
Well, it would have been a Sunday. So I probably had a bologna sandwich.
All right. Well, you definitely remember all the shitty things I did to you as a kid that I don't even remember. So apparently I was quite the bully.
I am going to get revenge.
Yeah, I didn't know I was such a bully, but, my brother comes up with stuff, too. He's like, you did this to me. You did this to me. I'm like, that was mean.
Yeah.
I truly didn't do it to be mean. I thought I was being funny. It was funny to me.
Look, you know how I know you did it to be mean? Because you just crossed your fingers when you said that.
I didn't cross my fingers.
Yeah, you did.
I truly, honest to goodness, I didn't do it to be mean. I thought it was funny. I was being mean.
You were mean.
Anyways.
I promised myself I wasn't going to cry. But I mean.
I'll get you a tissue, little girl.
It's horrible.
Oh
my God.
Want me to put some lipstick on you?
Cry.
All right, so back to the story.
Okay, so we've covered element 115. What else have you got for me?
It is also said that he received something called a magenta clearance, which is debatable whether that exists, honestly. Yeah. I mean, but it's thought that after Roswell, that, who was it, Truman? Was it President Truman back then? Anyways, that he had a clearance, what's called a magenta clearance, that they started so that people with this clearance could look into these kinds of, claims and that kind of thing. But they had to have this top-notch magenta clearance to have any of the information. Yeah. So that is one thing. And the thing that interested me about this magenta clearance is if it's real, then that's supposed to be even over what the president has. Yeah. So, we were talking about before, I don't know if the president has all this information on aliens.
Yeah, he may just have plausible deniability.
No, I could be completely wrong, and this clearance may not even exist. Yeah. But that's, that's supposedly the way that it is. So I already talked about the Russians coming over there. Let's see what else is here. We've covered a lot of this stuff that I have on my list here. So one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is while he worked at S4, he said that what's called the Office of Federal Aaron, you got me not being able to talk now.
It happens.
The Office of Federal Investigation, or OFI, would visit his home randomly and just basically look through everything, find, try to make sure that they're not doing something that would jeopardize the project and probably plant bugs and things like that.
Obviously, they found some shit because he got kicked out.
Well, they found some stuff, but we'll get to that. Yeah. He also screwed himself over.
Oh, yeah, I know the story about that. So.
But Yeah, it gets interesting. It's definitely, they should make a movie of this.
I'm pretty sure they will, especially with the.
I'm surprised they haven't already, though.
I'm pretty sure it'll happen. Especially with the, like I said, the resurgence.
Well, I hope they don't make it cheesy. I hope they make it good if they do.
I'm pretty sure it won't be cheesy.
You don't think?
No.
Who would play Bob Lazar?
Stephen King.
Stephen King is not an actor.
I don't know. You kind of put me on the spot right now.
Yeah, I did.
So,
but it's a thought. Okay. I guess it doesn't matter because you really don't have to look like him. No, it's not that big of a deal. All right. Anyways, so this basically. Oh God, he's got his thinking face on now. He's really trying to think about that question.
Yeah, I am.
That's got him more intrigued than how gravity can be bent into.
I'm listening to you as well, but I'm thinking about this.
Okay. So anyways, one day when Kristen Merck, who was Bob's now ex-sister-in-law, and a lady named Mrs. Wayne Higdon. Don't know why, it didn't have her first name, but okay. Apparently she belonged to her husband back property. Then. That's the way it was. And they were at his house, and a man named Mike Thigpen came to the house. He came in and did a search. Mm-hmm. He didn't, I'm sure he didn't say, "Hey, I'm coming to do a search because... you've got a high-level government clearance," but, he did go in there and he was looking around and stuff. And so these two people corroborated, after he came out, that, yes, this happened. Mike Thigpen did work for them. I mean, that is, Mike Thigpen has come out and said, well, he doesn't remember the specifics, but he does remember going there.
Yeah.
Now, he did security clearances for... other things as well, so he doesn't remember, what it was
exactly
for.
What it was for. Yeah,
but these two ladies do say that they do remember that. That doesn't really prove a lot, but I'm not saying that it proves anything. But what it does prove is that they were in his house and they were looking around. Could have taken something.
Even once
could
again,
have
it
not.
could have been.
I don't know.
Even once again, it could have been for something as lowly as a janitor, or maybe they.
I don't think it would have been for a janitor.
Well, maybe, how about this? Maybe they interviewed him for the job. He didn't get it. He was so pissed off about it, he just made shit up.
It's a possibility.
The one scientist that said he worked with him
but the thing that keeps coming out is Los Alamos, he worked there, period. He worked there. And he had to have worked there as a scientist. Mm-hmm. This other scientist is not the only scientist that has come out and said it, but he's the only one that has come out to the public and, said, I don't care. I'm retired. I don't care anymore. I'll tell you. So, I don't know. The thing about it is, to me, if he worked at Los Alamos, any of this other S4 stuff could be true.
Yeah, it could be, but I don't believe it is. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
My opinion. I mean, you got yours. I've got mine. Our listeners
I'm open-minded. I'm open-minded, but at the same time, I tilt towards believing that he's not lying. You were telling me, you crossed your fingers a while ago, you lied, which, no,
she did.
I didn't. If I crossed my fingers, it was one time, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, I wasn't lying. But anyways, body language, it truly is a thing. You can tell certain things by somebody's body language. Anyways, so when you watch him talk, he does not look like he's hiding anything. His body language is open. He, when people are lying, they blink a lot. A lot of times. Now, these are generalizations. Yeah. It's not going to be every case, but generally they do. And you would see clusters of these kinds of things. He didn't do that. Generally, they would, if you're lying, you're going to kind of cover your mouth.
Sometimes.
He did that. He doesn't. I think I've seen him do that like one time when he said something and he had his mouth covered and then he corrected himself, So he was not telling the truth, but he fixed it, Mm-hmm. But, he just doesn't look
Well, here's the thing
like
on that.
Somebody who's lying.
If he is lying, he's going to rehearse this shit.
Yeah.
And maybe whenever he covered his mouth, he had a momentary lapse where he's not.
Yeah.
He forgot that he was supposed to be covering.
Let me ask you a question. What does he gain from saying all this stuff?
Okay. So if he hadn't come forward, would you know who Bob Lazar is?
No. But
has he made money off of this? Are you sure?
To my knowledge, he has not.
Okay.
Now, we can never be 100% sure,
Yeah.
but he doesn't tour the circuits. Now, he has gone to a couple of conventions.
A couple?
I don't know how many.
He's been doing conventions since he came out.
He doesn't do those anymore, I don't
George
think.
Knapp actually got him to do them, and I'm pretty sure he got paid for those.
Well, I don't know. This is coming from him and George Knapp saying that he doesn't make money off of it.
By the way, this is Einstein and gravitational waves.
That's pretty cool. I'll have to look that up.
I mean, gravitational waves are a thing, but basically what they're saying is they are bending the gravitational waves to bring them closer. Which to me is like, we would notice something like that. Something, I don't know. Something would be kind of...
Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. But at the same time, too, how many times do people see weird stuff up in the sky happen? I mean, we see weird things that we're like, that's a weird... Must be some kind of weird natural thing, You never know. Supposedly, that's the way it is. Now, if you come out and you show me proof, then it is what it is. But the reason that I tend to believe that is because that comes from George Knapp as well. He did say Bob Lazar doesn't make money off of this stuff. So, and I also know that he is not a person that likes to be in the public eye. He's not just all over the place everywhere. This man who did this documentary last year, he really had to do some work to get Bob to do this documentary. Lots of reporters try to get him to talk. Lots of people want to interview him, but he doesn't really do a whole lot of that kind of thing. And he doesn't seem... If you look, when you look at people, you get a general idea. Now that doesn't mean that you're right. But he, to me, just doesn't seem to be somebody who is looking for lots of attention. He just doesn't seem the type.
So I'm sure some of our people are going to question me on why I believe Calvin Parker. Because I believe him.
Right.
Why am I not believing Bob Lazar?
But can I point something out? You didn't necessarily believe Calvin Parker until you sat down with him either.
Exactly.
And until we dug more into the story. And we haven't sat down with Bob Lazar.
Well, watching some of his interviews, I have seen some of his interviews. Yeah. The very first time I saw Bob Lazar in an interview, immediately I said he's lying. I don't know what it is about it, but just something in my instincts kicked in. I'm like, this man is lying. Now I'm going to go back once again to he's rehearsing. Mm-hmm. He's going over what he wants to say. And there are certain things that you can do when you're telling a lie that you're not going to do. You're not going to blink a lot, especially if they are rehearsed. They're not going to cover their mouth. They're not going to look away, look up, say, That's another thing that a lot of people do say.
Except I do that regardless because I got brain farts bad.
Well, I mean, people that are lying, they're using it so they can think of something to go with it. He's going to rehearse the shit out of it, and for some reason, the very first time I saw an interview with him, I'm like, this man is lying.
What interview did you see?
I cannot remember.
It wasn't the one with Joe Rogan, was it?
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen that one.
Because that one started out pretty rocky, I'll tell you, and I had the same thought at first. Yeah. But, the more I heard him talk, the more I believed him. But he had a migraine, supposedly, in that show and was having really... Well, you could say that, or maybe he really did have one. I don't know, But I do know if you've got a migraine, you're going to have some problems. Yeah. But he did, the more he talked, I
haven't watched or listened to the Joe Rogan one yet.
It's good. I have to say it's good.
All kinds of crazy wonky with me. But, it's just something about his personality, the way he presented himself. It did not sit right.
Okay. And I will say he's done some questionable things. I'm not convinced that, he's the best guy in the world and everything he's saying is true. Yeah. Like I said, I think there's some things that are true and some things that are not.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that a lot of people like to point out is you've seen the special, the Netflix special.
Yes.
And I'm surprised that you haven't talked about it yet. The bone density scanner or the bone length scanner.
Yes, haven't gotten to that yet.
Well, do you want to tell people about it real quick?
Well, basically, it was something that he said way back in the 80s. He said that the way that they actually checked into work basically was there was this thing that was a bone density scanner, and you put your hand on it, and it had like these spikes you put your between your fingers. You put your hand on it, and it measured the length of your finger bones, and it was supposed to be able to tell who you are by that. Not too many people knew about that at the time.
Bullshit.
Why do you say that?
It was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Was it really?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's possible then. That's where, where he got that from. But anyways, I will say there's not a whole lot of information about that even online to this day. But it definitely was something not a lot of people knew about back then. Now, it may have been in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that could be where he got it from. I don't know. But the average person really didn't know about that kind of thing, and maybe until that came out.
Okay. The device is called the Identimat 2000, was public knowledge as early as 1971, and in 1977 it was even featured in the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind when a character uses it to gain access to a top-secret facility.
And as far as it being in the movie, maybe that is where he got it from. But I beg to differ as far as the public having that information in the early 70s. It was maybe information they weren't trying to keep secret. Yes. That don't mean Joe Schmo on the street knew about it. Come on.
Well,
whatever they used to sign in right now, we don't have a clue. They may tell us if we ask them, but we don't have a clue just walking down the street. Come on.
His thing was, he worked at Los Alamos. We know that.
Right.
Maybe they had them there.
It's possible.
They used it too. They used it again at top secret places. They had one there.
But see, the whole thing is, as that more proof unfolds that he worked at Los Alamos, it really adds more credibility to everything.
Not really. No.
It does to me.
Not to me.
Yeah. All right. So
maybe he's been to some other sites where they had these.
Yeah.
They've been around public knowledge since 1971, which means they were used before then as well.
Yeah.
So,
but you keep saying public knowledge, and I think that's probably not a good term to use because, yes, the public could know about it, but like I said, Joe Schmo walking down the street is not going to have a clue
and maybe
about
that's exactly why he used it. He knew about it.
Yeah.
But he knew that the average person wouldn't know about it.
Possibly.
And the excitement that he showed. Now, I did get to the point in the documentary when the guy's like, hey, is this what you had? And he's like, oh, that's exactly what I had.
Uh-huh.
They had that shit in a friggin' movie in 1977.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's seen that.
I've seen that movie, and I don't remember. I'm not saying it's not there. It's obviously there.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just saying it's probably one of those things we don't even, that it was in there, you don't even think about it. So things started to fall downhill pretty quickly after he worked there. So some of it, it wasn't necessarily his fault, but then some of it, he did some really dumb stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's one of the things that, to me, helps the story to be more credible is, why would I make myself look bad if I'm going to tell these lies? But we'll go through them. So the first of all, or not tell the lies. I'm sorry.
That's from the movie.
That's cool. I didn't mean tell the lies. I mean tell, make things. Well, what? I just got lost. Oh my
sorry,
God!
I fucked you up.
You did. You showed me something when I was in the middle of a thought.
I showed her something that completely changed the way she looked at everything.
He showed me. Yeah,
I showed her the still from the movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they're using a bone length scanner.
Yeah, and looking at it, I wouldn't have even necessarily paid attention to it. Probably in the movie, it's just probably a small little scene. I don't know. It may be more, but the public wouldn't have necessarily picked up on it unless you're an eagle eye movie viewer, which this is a lot of people are.
And my phone's got a crack in it, but. Before you start up again and I screw you up, I'll maybe show you that.
Cool.
So the one on the right is the one that they showed him a picture of, and the other two are basically from the movie.
Huh. So, cool. Okay. Same thing.
Yep.
Definitely. So, and I'm not saying that that's not where it came from.
That's one of the things that's like, oh, well, this was top secret. Only I would know about it. No, everyone knew about it. Or everyone could have known about it.
Could have known about it.
Anyone that's seen the movie saw what it was. They may not have paid attention to it, but it was in the movie. Some may
not have, yeah. But, there are a lot of people, like you can ask my brother, yourself, and you too probably, what happened in some movie he watched, 10, 15 years ago, and just some tiny little thing, and you remember it. Yeah. Not me.
It's a curse.
Not me. I'm like, did I see that movie?
You know who is absolutely horrible with movie trivia?
Who?
Greg.
Really?
Absolutely
I would
horrible
be too.
With it. And it is so friggin' hilarious. Because we'll say some shit that, he should know. Because, hey, we just watched this movie like 2 weeks ago. And he's like, what movie is that from? It's like, are you kidding me, dude? Are you freaking kidding me right now?
That's funny. So that's all the time that we have today to talk about Bob Lazar.
Hey, Angel, we're going to turn this into a two-parter.
Yeah, we're going to have to because it's such an interesting subject and there's so many layers to it and so many things. I mean, just so much to talk about.
It's like an
onion, like an onion, like an ogre.
Yeah, makes people cry.
Makes people cry.
Yeah,
poor Shrek.
Leave them out in the sun, they get white spots and get real soft.
Yeah, poor huh?
No, I think that was in it. It's not word for word.
I don't remember that, but okay. Anyways. But so we'll talk more about the whole Bob Lazar case next week. Send us some feedback, though, if you have any. Let us know what you think about it, because we both have our own ideas, but we're also open-minded. Both of us are. We're not going to, if we have some proof staring us in the face, we're not going to say,
Bob Lazar, if you're listening to this, we want to interview you, buddy.
Yep, but he would never come on here because you said you didn't believe him, and that upsets
That's why
him.
He should come on here to try to convince me that he is right.
Yeah. I don't think he's concerned with convincing anybody.
If he doesn't go,
he said he doesn't care if anybody believes it or not.
Well, he should.
He doesn't care.
Why wouldn't he want people to know that he's right?
Because he's over it, I think, and I don't want to get into next week, but there's reasons why he came out that, according to him, that have nothing to do with being the center of, the center of the spotlight. But anyway, so I don't know, but let's tell a creepypasta story.
Okay.
We don't have any ghost stories. Send us your ghost stories because we want to tell those. But for now, it's creepypasta. And I do want to point out, before anybody says anything, creepypasta is not real. Creepypasta is, they're made up stories, they're scary, they're spooky, but they're not real. So please don't get confused and think what we're reading is somebody's ghost story. You want to read it, Aaron?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Read it spooky.
I don't know what it is, but I'll try. Okay, this one's called Footsteps. This is long, so I apologize for that. I've never had to tell this story with enough detail to actually explain it all the way, but it is true. And it happened when I was about 6 years old. In a quiet room, if you press your ear against a pillow, you can hear your heartbeat. As a kid, the muffled, rhythmic beats sounded like soft footsteps on a carpeted floor. And so as a kid, almost every night, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I would hear these footsteps, and I would be ripped back into consciousness, terrified. For my entire childhood, I lived with my mother in a fairly nice neighborhood that was in a transitional phase. People of lower economic means were gradually moving in, and my mother and I were two of those people. We lived in the kind of house you would see being transported in two pieces on the interstate, but my mom took good care of it. There were a lot of woods surrounding the neighborhood, and I would play in it and explore during the day, but at night, as things often do to a kid, they took a more sinister feeling. This, coupled with the fact that due to the nature of our house, there was a fairly large crawl space underneath, filled my mind with imaginary monsters and inescapable scenarios which would consume my thoughts when I was awoken by the footsteps. I told my mom about the footsteps, and she said that I was just imagining things. I persisted enough that she blasted my ears with water from a turkey baster once just to placate me, since I thought that would help. Of course it didn't. Despite all the creepiness and footsteps, the only weird thing that ever happened was that every now and then I would awake on the bottom bunk, despite having gone to sleep on the top. But this wasn't really weird, since I sometimes get up to piss or something to drink and could remember just going back to sleep on the bottom bunk. I'm an only child, so it didn't matter. This would happen once, maybe twice a week, but waking up on the bottom bunk wasn't too terrifying. But one night, I didn't wake up on the bottom bunk. I had heard the footsteps, but was too far gone to be woken by them. And when I was awoken, it wasn't from the sound of footsteps or a nightmare, but because I was cold, really cold. When I opened my eyes, I saw stars. I was in the woods. I sat up immediately and tried to figure out what was going on. I thought I was dreaming, but that didn't seem right, though neither did me being in the woods. There was a deflated pool float right in front of me, one of the ones shaped like a shark. This only added to the surreal feeling, but after a while it seemed like I just wasn't going to wake up because I wasn't asleep. I stood up to orient myself, but I didn't recognize these woods. I played in the woods by my house all the time, so I knew them really well. But if these weren't the same woods, how could I get out? I took a step and felt a shooting pain in my foot, which knocked me back to where I had just been laying. I had stepped on a thorn. By the light of the moon, I could see that they were everywhere. I looked at my other foot, but it was fine. And as a matter of fact, so was the rest of me. I didn't have another scratch on me, and I wasn't even that dirty. I cried for a little bit and then stood up. I didn't know which way to go, so I just picked a direction. I resisted the urge to call out since I wasn't sure I wanted to be found by who or what might be out there. I walked for what seemed like hours. I tried to walk in a straight line and tried to course correct when I had to take detours. But I was a kid and I was afraid. There weren't any howls or screams, and only once did I hear any noise that scared me. It sounded like a crying baby. I think that it was just a cat, but I panicked. I ran veering in different directions to avoid big thicks of bushes and collapsed trees. And I was paying close attention to where I stepped because at this point, my feet were in pretty bad shape. I paid too much attention to where I was stepping and not enough to where those steps were leading, because not long after, hearing the cry, I saw something that filled me with the kind of despair I haven't experienced since it was the pool float. I was only 10 feet from where I had woken up. This wasn't magic or some supernatural space bending. I was lost. Up until that moment, I thought more about getting out of the woods than how I got in. But being back at the very beginning caused my mind to swim. I wasn't even sure that these were my woods. I had only been hoping that they were. Had I run in a large circle around that spot? Or did I just get turned around and start making my way back? How was I going to get out? At the time, I thought the North Star was the brightest star, so I looked and found the brightest one and followed it. Eventually, things started to look more familiar, and when I saw the ditch, a dirt ditch my friends and I would have dirt clod wars in, I knew I had made it out. By that point, I was walking really slowly because my feet hurt so much, but I was so happy to be so close to home that I broke into a light jog. When I actually saw the roof of my house over a neighboring lower set house, I let out a light sob and ran faster. I just wanted to be home. I had already decided that I wouldn't say anything because I had no idea what I could possibly say. I would get back in the house, somehow clean up, and get into bed. My heart sank as I rounded the corner and my house came fully into view. Every light in the house was on. I knew my mom was up. And I knew I would have to explain, or try to explain, where I had been. And I couldn't even figure out where to start. My run became a light jog, which became a walk. I saw her silhouette through the blinds, and although I was worried about how to explain things to her, that didn't matter to me at that point. I walked up a couple of steps of the porch, put my hand on the doorknob, and turned. Right before I pushed it open, 2 arms wrapped around me and pulled me back. I screamed as loud as I could, "Mom, please help me, Mom! Mom, please help!" The feeling of being so close to being safe and then being physically pulled away filled me with a kind of dread that is, even after all these years, indescribable. The door I had been torn away from opened, and a flash of hope shot through my heart, but it wasn't my mom. It was a man, and he was enormous. I thrashed around and kicked at the shins of the person holding me while also trying to get away from the person who had come out from my house. I was scared, but I was furious. Let me go! Where is she? Where's my mom? What'd you do to her? As my throat stung from screaming and I was drawing in another breath, I became aware of a sound that had been present for longer than I perceived it. Honey, please calm down. I've got you. It sounded like my mom. The arms loosened and set me down, and as the man approaching me blocked out the porch light with his head, I noticed his clothes. He was a cop. I turned to face the voice behind me and saw that it was really in fact my mom. Everything was okay. I began to cry, and the three of us went inside. I'm so glad you're home, sweetie. I was worried I'd never see you again. By this point, she was crying too. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just wanted to come home. I'm sorry. It's okay. Just don't ever do that again. I'm not sure me or my shins could take it. A little laughter broke through my sobs, and I smiled a bit. Well, I'm sorry for kicking you, but why'd you have to grab me like that? I was just afraid you'd run away again. I was confused. What do you mean? We found your note on your pillow, she said, and pointed to a piece of paper that the police officer was sliding across the table. I picked up the note and read it. It was a running away letter. It said that I was very unhappy, never wanted to see her or any of my friends again. The police officer exchanged a few words with my mom on the porch while I stared at the letter. I didn't remember writing a letter. I didn't remember anything about any of this. But even if I sometimes went to the bathroom at night and didn't remember, or even if I could have gone into the woods on my own, even if all of that could have been true, the only thing I knew at this point was, this isn't how you spell my name. I didn't write this letter.
I think that's about all of our show today. Aaron, you want to take us out?
Yeah. So thank you to MacNarb Gaming, Never Ready Gamers, and darktides.net. That's some of the new people that we're working with, darktides.net.
Right. Check out darktides.net. I write on there quite a bit. It's growing rapidly, but it's paranormal and science related, and it's really cool. And he's also got a lot of really cool T-shirts on there.
But yeah, visit darktides.net. And I'm Aaron.
And I'm Angel.
And don't burn the roo, guys.
Don't burn the roo.